It is 10:07. Denis Walter with you, 3RW Nights. Good to have you along. Joining me now is Shane Dunlop, head of Channel 31. Of course, there's been a battle to retain Channel 31. It holds a very important spot in people's hearts and lives. Love to hear of your favourite Channel 31 shows across the years. Shane Dunlop, good evening to you.
Good evening, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's been a bit of a battle.
It's been an interesting few months, let alone 6 years, since this has been, happening, I suppose.
What was the reason that the future of Channel 31 was in peril, in danger?
Look, it goes back to 2014. At the time, Malcolm Turnbull was the communications minister, and it was his decision originally that the original reasoning behind that decision was that they would use the space that the community TV stations occupy. There was 5 of us in 2014. There's now only 2. But they would use the space we occupy to basically test new broadcast technology, essentially, that, in layman's terms, would allow the commercial networks to broadcast more channels using less spectrum space. And so, very valid reason back in 2014. It took several years for them to actually be able to get to a point where they could test it. They did so in 2018 in the vacant markets that were left behind by our sister stations in Sydney and Brisbane. And at that point in time, the commercial networks decided that it was technology that they just didn't want to adopt at that point in time. And so the space in Sydney and Brisbane and now in Perth has been vacant for many years, and there is unlikely to be a use for that space for up to 5 years to come. And so sadly, we were sort of in a position where the original decision, which was very valid at the time, is no longer applicable, but the decision to remove community TV still stood. So a bit of a tricky spot to be in.
What's the position, for those who haven't caught up with it, what's the position now?
So we obviously lobbied pretty hard, and that was us in Melbourne and our sister station in Adelaide. We made the case, over and over again that whilst there is no alternative use for the space we occupy, that we should be allowed to stay. And obviously there's overwhelming public and bipartisan political support and organisational support. The list of people who would prefer to see community TV survive into the future was endless. But unfortunately, we had to, I guess, make that case right up until the 11th hour. I mean, it could not have been closer to the deadline. We found out, like most of the rest of the country, on live TV, watching Q&A on the ABC, the night before we were scheduled to be switched off, that we would be receiving an extra 12 months. And so, just a really a roller coaster ride is probably the best way of putting it.
Were you hoping to receive a bit more than 12 months?
We have said for many years now, particularly since the testing of the new technology ceased, that we felt that we should be allowed to stay until there was a point in time where the space we occupied was usable for a reason that was of greater service to the Australian public. And that's a position we still theoretically hold. We do think that there is a value in retaining community television, and certainly there is a greater value than us being replaced by nothing at all, which is what will happen if and when we are switched off. We were so close to the end, though, Dennis, that this 12 months allows us to get through, what is a difficult time for everybody. And I know it's been talked about a lot, but we just simply would not have been able to survive as an organisation if we were switched off in the middle of what's happening at the moment. And this gives us a chance to continue to give back and continue to do what we've been doing for over 25 years, and perhaps see through to a future point where we've been able to navigate what are truly difficult times for everybody. And if we are forced to switch off at a future date, certainly we may be doing it at a more stable time. And so we're thankful for the extra year.
Well, when I'm sort of thinking about it, and I have been thinking about it this afternoon, the number of people who are now stars in entertainment who've come via either community television or community radio is extraordinary. And it makes me wonder where they're going to come from if things like Channel 31 disappear.
Well, certainly, I mean, this is something that that gets brought up a lot when the question gets asked of me or of anybody about our importance. And certainly we point to the people who have come through community media and gone on to bigger and better things in front of the camera. What I always like to say in addition to that is that the list of people who have gone through the community media sector, and in our case community television, who have worked behind the camera in whatever role you can choose, that list is far longer and has had far more of an impact to the Australian screen and media industry over the last 3 decades almost. You would be hard-pressed to find somebody who works in film or television in this state who, on their way through to having a career, did not touch community TV at some point. And so that really, I think, is the underreported side of it as well. Yes, we definitely are a stepping stone for personalities to make a career in front of the camera, but there are so many more people who get an opportunity to learn a genuine trade behind the camera that will have not have that opportunity moving forward if we're not around.
It's. I'm just thinking of various people who've come through via community radio. Sam Pang comes to mind. Community radio or television. Sam Pang, Ross Stevenson, our very own, one of the most successful broadcasters ever in Australian media. There are so many. I'm just thinking of them. Tommy Little, Dave Thornton. The list just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, Waleed, Hamish and Andy, Rose, Peter Hallier, pretty much anybody who hosts the project on any given night likely came through us as well. There truly is a long list there.
Shane, great to chat. I hope it's much longer than 1 year. I hope it's for many years to come. Maybe that will happen. There'll be a lot of people who will be happy. I'm just thinking about other things like the Marngrook Footy Show and just so many things that have been a huge part of Channel 31. What about the fish tank? Is it still going?
Well, the original fish tank is long gone, sadly, but we do still air fish cam in the traditional sense, very, very late in the evening. In fact, you probably have to stay up till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to see it. But it still is there as a bit of a homage to our origins. But perhaps we were actually thinking of if we were going to be switched off on June 30th, our last hour of broadcasting was going to be the fish tank. We felt that was poetic.
We could have all had fish tank parties.
That's right.
Although probably not this year. Shane, great to chat with you. Continued success. I'm really happy to know it's still going.
Cheers, Dennis.
Good on you. 10:15, Shane Dunlop, head of Channel 31. Community radio, community television plays a big part. And that list that Shane and I just mentioned is, wow, it's just extraordinary, the number of people who've come through radio, community radio or community television.